In the past, young Uryu sees his father cutting into his mother Kanai Katagiri's body and begs him to stop, saying she's been dead for a while. Years later, Ichigo asks Uryu why he's attending a regular school. When Uryu asks what he means, Ichigo explains that since Uryu's parents are doctors, he thought Uryu would want to be one too, and go to a better school. Uryu points out that Ichigo's dad is also a doctor, but Ichigo brushes it off, calling his dad just a guy with a beard. Uryu then says he doesn't want to be a doctor anymore. Ichigo is curious about what he means by anymore, but when Uryu stays silent, Ichigo tells him he doesn't have to explain if he doesn't want to. In his mind, Uryu recalls deciding that day never to be a doctor because if being a doctor means cutting into your dead wife, he wants no part of it. In the present, Haschwalth confronts Uryu and notes that he seems troubled. When Uryu points out that Haschwalth looks troubled too, Haschwalth reminds him that at night, when yhwach rests, their powers switch, and seeing the future can be very unsettling. Uryu notices Haschwalth's strange eyes and asks if he saw him betraying the Quincy's. Haschwalth denies saying anything like that, but reveals he found several devices Uryu planted all over Varvelt. Though Uryu claims not to know what Haschwalth is talking about, Haschwalth says he recognizes the devices. They break down and spread reishi, similar to Soken Ishida's Glove of Suffering. He demands to know what Uryu was planning by placing them around Varvelt. Uryu rejects Haschwalth's accusations as baseless, leading Haschwalth to demand proof of his loyalty. He then attacks Uryu and sends him flying. As Uryu tries to stop him, he suddenly faces Ichigo. Orihime and Chad, noticing the blast from Haschwalth's attack, rush to Ichigo's location and are shocked to see Uryu standing there. Haschwalth steps through the hole in the wall, and Ichigo remarks that his eyes look just like Yhwach's. Haschwalth tells Uryu that fate has provided the perfect chance to prove himself. He commands Uryu to kill his friends if he truly isn't a traitor, claiming he already knows how Uryu will respond. Without hesitation, Uryu fires two Heilig Feel at Ichigo, who dodges and leaps forward to clash with him. Demanding answers, Ichigo presses Uryu, but Uryu counters with a Seal Schneider, forcing Ichigo back before firing it into the ground beneath him. Chad catches Ichigo, but both fall along with Orihime, who uses Santen Keshun to cushion their landing. Uryu follows them down, prompting Ichigo to demand why he sided with the Quincy's and why he's trying to fight them. When Uryu counters by asking what Ichigo plans to do about it, Ichigo firmly responds that if Uryu's reasons make sense, he'll fight him and knock some sense into him. Uryu then asks what happens if his reasons don't make sense. Ichigo bluntly replies that he'll still smack him. Uryu remarks that Ichigo will hit him no matter what. He then tosses Ichigo a Sun Key, explaining that every member of the Stern Ritter is issued one. By holding the Sun Key up to special metal sheets called Sun Gates, a person can travel between different Sun Gates scattered throughout Varvelt. Uryu tells the group that there are stairs to his left. If they go down 5 levels, they'll find the Sun Gate used for invading the living world. He urges them to use it to return home while he stays behind to destroy the palace. Uryu reveals that the chips he planted throughout Varvelt will cause the palace, made of reishi, to collapse when activated. Ichigo demands to know what Uryu means and tells him to stop joking around. Uryu admits he expected Ichigo to say that, which is why he came alone without telling them. When Ichigo asks why Uryu has to handle this by himself, saying they only need to defeat Yhwach, Uryu shouts that defeating Yhwach is impossible. When Ichigo asks why he's doing this, Uryu reveals that activating the collapse chips is something only he can do. The chips were made from the Sanrei Shuto given to him by his teacher, and only his spiritual pressure can activate them. He thought this through and believes there's no other way. As Uryu urges Ichigo to leave before Haschwalth notices, Haschwalth arrives and reminds Uryu that he already saw how this would play out. As Haschwalth approaches, Uryu tells Ichigo to head for the Sun Gate while he stays behind to fight. Ichigo tries to protest, but Uryu yells at him to leave at once. However, Haschwalth reveals the Sun Gate leading to the living world has already been destroyed. He declares that he will end things before Yhwach wakes up and starts twisting the shadows around him. Ichigo prepares to fight, but Uryu realizes what Haschwalth meant. He points out that Haschwalth's eyes are the same as Yhwach's. Since Yhwach is asleep, Haschwalth has his powers, meaning Yhwach currently lacks omniscience and omnipotence. Uryu urges Ichigo to head to Yhwach's location at the uppermost level of Varvelt. When Ichigo asks in shock if Uryu is staying behind, Uryu tells him to stop talking and go, insisting that those won't be his final words. Smiling, Ichigo heads upward with Chad and Orihime. Uryu notes that Haschwalth isn't even pretending to chase them and asks if he's sure about that. Haschwalth coldly replies that he doesn't need to chase them because he's already seen their deaths. There's no point in going after them. Summoning his Heilig Bogen, Uryu confidently declares that the future can still be changed. Surprised by Uryu's determination, Haschwalth notes that he seems like a completely different person, now full of hope. Realizing this, Uryu happily points out that if Haschwalth was surprised just now, it means he couldn't see him being hopeful before. This proves Haschwalth's power isn't truly all-knowing, as the two begin to clash. Meanwhile, yhwach dreams of Ichigo approaching him in his sleep and cutting him down the middle. He immediately wakes up as the sun rises, regaining his almighty power. Reflecting on the dream, yhwach remarks that something so wonderful could almost be a nightmare. Back with Haschwalth and Uryu, Haschwalth deflects a Heilig Pfeil that Uryu fired at him and notes that it's already morning. Uryu comments that the Sternritter must be upset for failing to defeat him before dawn. However, Haschwalth scoffs, saying all he sees is a desperate beast fighting for survival. Uryu responds that he's never been called a beast before, admitting it makes him sound fearless. And he kind of likes it. Haschwalth corrects Uryu, saying he never intended to defeat him during the night. He explains that his own power is better suited for combat than His Majesty's, especially against an enemy whose mistakes must be corrected. With that, he fires a blast of energy from his sword at Uryu. Meanwhile, Ichigo and Orihime reach the throne room doors, sensing yhwach's spiritual pressure. Ichigo asks Orihime to be his defense and says he's counting on her. Feeling happy that she can finally fight alongside Ichigo and protect him, she agrees. As they enter the throne room, yhwach greets Ichigo, saying he has been patiently awaiting the arrival of his Son of Darkness. To watch the full Ichigo vs yhwach fight, click the I button here or check the description. On one of the lower floors of the castle, Haschwalth says that everyone walks through life on a balance. We move forward by weighing everything we encounter in life. We decide what is right and wrong for ourselves. The pieces of right and wrong we sort pile up to shape who we are, he explains, standing over an incapacitated Uryu. He notes that Uryu has also done the same, but he cannot see the form Uryu has shaped for himself through his choices. Haschwalth then asks Uryu who he truly is, questioning if he really wants to risk his life for his shallow human friends. As he struggles to stand, Uryu tells Haschwalth that he talks too much and that he can't answer his foolish questions until he defeats all of the Vandenreich. He then forms a new bow. Elsewhere, as they arrive through a gate of the sun, Isshin tells Ryukin that he's surprised the decades-old pass still works. He adds that he has to thank Ryukin's father for having the foresight to take it with him when he was banished. Ryukin comments that, for once, he's thankful for having such a sneaky father. Isshin responds, saying that his son talks badly about him because he talks about his father like that. Assuming a battle stance, Uryu asks Haschwalth why he's so concerned about what kind of person he is, stating that he can't imagine Haschwalth would be that interested. He points out that Haschwalth must have realized his goal was to buy time for Ichigo to reach yhwach. Uryu then questions why. Instead of asking him all these questions, Haschwalth didn't just defeat him quickly so he could rush to yhwach. However, Haschwalth simply tells Uryu not to make him repeat himself. He's already seen how things will end. They will die. No matter how long he toys with Uryu here, His Majesty will never be in danger. With confidence, Uryu responds that Haschwalth's ability to see the future can change, just like how he was caught off guard by Uryu's unexpected growth. Haschwalth admits this is true, but reveals that the power he uses comes from yhwach, and it's only borrowed. He explains that the true terror of the Almighty isn't just the ability to see the future. When Uryu demands to know what he means, Haschwalth promises to explain after their fight is over. He then declares that it's time for Uryu to place everything on his broken balance, the path of no return, before launching a brutal attack and beating him severely. As Haschwalth approaches the heavily injured Uryu, who lies on the ground panting, he reveals that his shrift is B, the balance. He explains that he maintains harmony by transferring misfortunes within his domain to those blessed with good fortune. Any misfortunes that befall him are absorbed by his sacrifice shield, ensuring he remains unaffected. He coldly informs Uryu that he doesn't stand a chance against him. As Haschwalth prepares to finish Uryu off, believing there's nothing more he can learn from him, Uryu asks if he's curious about his shrift. Haschwalth dismisses the idea, telling Uryu not to waste time prolonging the inevitable. He asserts that if Uryu's shrift were powerful enough to defeat him, he would have used it already. However, Uryu calmly responds that it's quite the opposite. He was waiting for the right moment. When Haschwalth asks what he means, Uryu reveals that his shrift is A, antithesis. Instantly, Uryu's wounds vanish and reappear on Haschwalth, leaving him bleeding profusely. Stunned, Haschwalth demands to know what happened. Uryu explains that antithesis allows him to reverse events between two chosen points. In this case, he simply switched their injuries. Recognizing the potential of such an ability, Haschwalth remarks that Uryu's power is truly formidable, which explains why yhwach took an interest in him. With the ability to undo events that have already happened, Uryu might be the only one capable of opposing yhwach's overwhelming power. Shocked by Haschwalth's remark, Uryu urgently demands to know if his words are connected to the true power of the Almighty. However, Haschwalth dismisses the question, asserting that delaying Uryu was the right move all along. Realizing the danger, Uryu tries to leave, but Haschwalth swiftly blocks his path. Using the balance, Haschwalth unleashes a devastating attack, gravely wounding Uryu. He acknowledges that Antithesis is indeed an impressive ability, but explains that it falls short against the balance. As he previously mentioned, all misfortunes that should befall Haschwalth are absorbed by his sacrifice shield. This means that the good fortune of Uryu successfully injuring Haschwalth is turned into equivalent misfortune that strikes Uryu instead. The misfortune inflicted on his body is absorbed by the sacrifice shield and then rains down on Uryu as even more misfortune, causing him further injury. As Haschwalth declares that Uryu has no chance of winning, Uryu attempts to crawl away. Haschwalth notices his determination and tells Uryu that he's a smart man, knowing that Uryu understands he can't defeat either him or yhwach. He then prepares to impale Uryu, comparing him to his incredibly foolish human friends. At the last moment, Uryu manages to dodge Haschwalth's stab. Surprised, Haschwalth is taken aback by Uryu's ability to still move. Uryu comments that he's like his friends, admitting that he thought he'd always remain calm. He points out that Ichigo's an idiot, so he can't act that way. If Ichigo wants to help, he just goes and helps. Orihime is also an idiot. Chad's an idiot. Rukia's an idiot. If he appears to be the same as those idiots, then that makes him happy. He then tells Haschwalth to make decisions based on his so-called balance. Haschwalth dismisses Uryu's emotions, stating he wasn't questioning how he feels. He then claims he can't see how being with them benefits Uryu and asks if Uryu has grown by being with his friends. He points out that, compared to the few years he spent with them, Uryu should have grown much more in the instant His Majesty gave him power. If friends are meant to help each other grow, it's not them, but His Majesty that Uryu should be willing to risk his life for. However, recalling Haschwalth's earlier words that the balance is a choice, Uryu responds that, given the choice, he chose to be with Ichigo and the others. There is no self-interest, no right or wrong, just that they are friends. Angered by Uryu's response, Haschwalth notes that he understands Uryu has no intention of forsaking anything, even though he was accepted by His Majesty. He then demands that Uryu at least forsake his life. However, before he can continue, an Ausweilen beam suddenly envelops him, surprising both him and Uryu.